Thank you so much for watching. If you found inspiration in Eleanor's story of resilience, integrity, and quiet triumph, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. We bring you powerful, true-to-life stories every week, stories that remind us it's never too late to rise, rebuild, and reclaim your worth. Your support helps us continue sharing these meaningful journeys that resonate with those who face setbacks and come out stronger. Don't forget to like the video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Whether you've experienced something similar or simply admire the courage of others, this is a space where we honor experience, wisdom, and justice. Share this video with someone who needs a little motivation today. Join our growing community because every story of comeback deserves to be heard. Subscribe now and be part of something truly inspiring. Eleanor, after 21 years, we're streamlining our executive structure, Martin said, barely glancing up from his smartwatch. You'll need to clear your desk by the end of the day. I sat across from him, my expression unreadable as I took in the weight of his words. The office I'd helped design, glass walls, polished wood, and the faint scent of citrus cleaner, now felt sterile and alien. 21 years dismissed over a coffee meeting at a hotel lounge. I understand, I replied, keeping my tone even. Thank you for allowing me to contribute to Faircrest Advisory for so many years. That made him pause. Martin finally looked up, clearly taken aback by my poise. He had expected emotion, anger, perhaps tears. Something that would make HR's presence feel necessary. Instead, my calm unsettled him. HR will process your departure, he said, regaining his corporate detachment. Tina will arrange your severance and final paycheck. I stood, adjusted the sleeve of my jacket, and left. The soft whoosh of the door closing behind me carried more finality than any raised voice could have. My name is Eleanor Reed. I'm 60 years old and have dedicated over 2 decades of my life to Faircrest Advisory in Charleston, South Carolina, where I built our compliance division from the ground up. I was the architect behind the auditing infrastructure that ensured our flawless record with the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, 15 straight years of spotless reports. It wasn't glamorous work. My name was never called out at shareholder meetings, and I was rarely invited to leadership retreats. But my systems worked. My attention to detail protected this firm from the regulatory disasters that ruined others. As I walked back through the office, past coworkers chatting about client portfolios and quarterly goals, no one knew that I had just been erased from the org chart. What they also didn't know was that the firm's next FINRA audit was set for Thursday, 4 business days away. For half a year, I'd been preparing for it. Running simulations, verifying exception reports, and cross-referencing trade data. On my office desk sat binders of annotated documents only I fully understood. My laptop contained the encrypted framework for our compliance workflows. The passwords and security tokens needed for certification lived in a private drive, accessible only to me. And now I had until 5 p.m. to disappear. I sat down and stared at the calendar. The audit date was circled in bold blue ink. I didn't need to grin or speak a word. Martin had just severed the one person holding the puzzle together. I joined Faircrest back in 2003, when it was a small, ambitious boutique firm. I had spent years in New York designing compliance protocols for global banks, and Faircrest needed someone who could build scalable systems for long-term growth. We don't just want to meet the rules, the founder, Gloria Faircrest, told me back then. We want to lead the industry in integrity. She understood something Martin never did. Compliance wasn't a box to check. It was a foundation. And I had been that foundation for 21 years. Until today. And now the countdown had begun. From the start, Faircrest Advisory was ready while rival firms scrambled to stay compliant. That's why we brought you on board, Eleanor, Gloria Faircrest had told me proudly after we passed our first post-recession audit with no citations. You think 3 steps ahead. And for years I had. I logged 60-hour weeks fine-tuning every protocol. I built the training modules, wrote all procedural manuals, and personally authenticated the control checkpoints using credentials only I possessed. When Gloria retired 5 years ago and handed the reins to her son-in-law, Martin Halbridge, I had hoped the company's values would endure. But Martin's priorities were different. He viewed regulatory oversight as a nuisance rather than a shield. During compliance briefings, he'd check emails. When I presented updates, he would cut me off with, "Just give me the summary." Each budget cycle, he slashed funding for my department, insisting we could automate more and hire less. At our peak, I managed a team of 12 specialists. Today, we were down to 4, and I was the only one who truly understood the system's architecture. Martin always touted efficiency, but he failed to grasp that expertise is the engine behind it. I'd streamlined the process over the years, but the personnel running it required deep understanding. You can't fake that with software. Just last month, as we geared up for the upcoming FINRA audit, I had asked for time on Martin's calendar. I wasn't retiring tomorrow, but at 60, I wanted to initiate a succession plan. "This setup is delicate," I had explained. "It works because I know exactly how to balance the variables. We need to start transferring that knowledge." He nodded vaguely and said, "Let's touch base in Q3. That touch base turned out to be my termination notice. As I began packing, I glanced at the framed photo of my husband, Robert, and our son David at his college graduation. Our Beagle, Scout, grinning between them. They'd understand. They'd seen the way the culture at Faircrest shifted, flashier events, louder slogans, and increasingly hollow values. By mid-afternoon, I had packed 2 small boxes. Just my laptop and a few thick binders remained, materials for an audit just 4 days away. There was a soft knock. Tina from HR stepped inside, holding a manila folder. Her tone was calm, but her eyes flickered with discomfort. "Eleanor," she said gently, "here's your exit paperwork." "I'm really sorry." Tina was young, mid-30s at most, and new to the company when it still had a soul. She couldn't possibly comprehend what this moment meant. Still, her courtesy mattered. "Thank you, Tina. This is just how things go sometimes," I replied, accepting the folder. She pointed to the severance section. "It's 6 months' pay. Your medical benefits will remain active through that period." There were the usual documents, non-disclosure, non-disparagement. Nothing unusual. But as I read closely, I noticed something. The agreements barred me from revealing confidential practices or criticizing Faircrest in public. But nowhere did it require me to help when everything started falling apart. "I believe everything is in order," I said calmly, signing where she indicated. "Though I do have one final question about the audit preparations." The audit folders on my desk sat precisely where I had left them. "Should I just leave these?" I asked, glancing toward Tina. She hesitated. I wasn't given a directive about documentation, but I think anything related to company operations should probably stay. I gave a small nod. Naturally. Though I should mention, they're mostly annotations and partial frameworks. Without familiarity with the system's logic and the audit flow, it'll be hard for anyone to interpret them. Trying to be helpful, Tina added, "Maybe send a summary email? Let your team know where everything stands." "That's a good suggestion. I'll do that before I go." Once she left, I sat at my workstation for what I knew would be the last time. I opened a fresh message and began outlining the current status. The prep was about 40% complete. The most sensitive tasks, the authentication protocols, cross-validation layers, and compliance thresholds, still needed my unique credentials and system pathways. I detailed the file locations, laid out the timeline, and broke down the pending action items. The tone was professional, detailed, and precise, just like every other message I had sent during my career. But I knew the truth. Without the connective tissue of my institutional knowledge, it was like handing someone a jigsaw puzzle without the picture on the box. Before sending, I copied Martin and our CFO, Gregory Sloan. If they wanted visibility, they had it now. Then I shut the laptop, collected my 2 small boxes, and took one last slow look around the office, where I had spent more hours than I could count. At the elevator, I heard hurried footsteps. Marisa Avery, My most promising associate came rushing toward me, her expression anxious. "Eleanor, is it true? You're leaving?" she asked, her voice tight. "It is. Today's my last day," I replied gently. "Management restructuring." "But the FINRA audit's on Thursday," she whispered, panic rising. "We're not ready. Not without you." The elevator arrived. I stepped inside and turned to face her. "I know. I've sent instructions." "I wish you all the best, Marissa." The door slid shut on her worried face. I felt a knot twist in my chest. By the next morning, I was awake by 6, habit, muscle memory, maybe even loyalty. For over 2 decades, this was the hour I reviewed overnight system triggers and forecasted risk alerts. But today, no dashboards, no reports. I lay still beside Robert, who was sound asleep, staring at the ceiling. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was disorienting. By 7, I was downstairs, coffee in hand, seated at my own laptop. My company email still worked. Access would expire in 24 hours per offboarding protocol. I logged in just to see 27 unread messages, 3 system flags. My authentication credentials were missing. Automated verification had stalled. 8 were from team members, Marissa included, asking increasingly anxious questions about procedures and file sequences. The rest were from department heads and directors, trying to understand why the audit framework was failing and, more urgently, how to fix it. And there it was. The ripple had begun. "Would you like me to continue the next chapter of Eleanor's story?" The latest message had landed in my inbox at 6:42 a.m. It was from Gregory Sloan, the CFO. "Eleanor, I realize your exit was unexpected, but we urgently need clarification on the audit documentation. The notes you left behind don't provide enough to move forward. Please call me as soon as possible to discuss how you might assist during this transition." I closed the tab without replying. Moments later, Robert shuffled into the kitchen, still in his robe, his silver hair a soft halo against the morning light. "Checking your inbox already?" he asked, raising a brow as he poured coffee. "Just seeing how quickly the cracks would show," I said, closing my laptop. A retired systems architect, Robert had spent years designing network frameworks for federal contractors. He understood better than most what happened when the wrong person pulled a foundational piece. "How long before they hit the wall?" he asked, settling across from me at the table. "By tomorrow afternoon, they'll feel it," I said. "System safeguards will time out. Once verification protocols lapse, they'll be locked out of key functions. Gregory will grasp it, Martin, probably not." He gave a dry chuckle. "What will you do when they call?" I stirred my coffee slowly. "Nothing, unless they want to talk terms. I owe them no favors." He nodded. "After 21 years, you deserve better than a hallway send-off." By noon, my company phone began vibrating repeatedly. Gregory's number appeared first. I let it go to voicemail. Within 2 hours, 4 more calls followed, along with a string of increasingly desperate text messages. At 4 p.m., an unfamiliar number lit up the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Eleanor Reed," I said. "Ms. Reed, this is Daniel Carrington from Atlantic Oak Partners," came a measured voice. "I hope this isn't inconvenient. I heard of your departure from Faircrest and wanted to reach out. We'd be interested in exploring a potential opportunity with you." Atlantic Oak was Faircrest's main competitor in Charleston, an older firm with deep institutional roots. I'd seen Daniel speak at industry panels, though we'd never spoken directly. "Well, Mr. Carrington, the timing is certainly interesting," I said. "I'm open to conversation. Would tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock work for you? At our Meeting Street office." "That works just fine," I replied. When I hung up, Robert smirked. "Didn't take long. The finance world in this city is tight," I replied. "News travels faster than policy updates." My phone buzzed again. "Gregory," for the 5th time that day. I answered. "Eleanor, thank goodness," he exhaled. "We're hitting major issues with the audit prep. The system's rejecting credentials, and no one understands what documentation is valid. Can you come in tomorrow and walk us through it? I'm already scheduled for a meeting tomorrow morning, I said evenly. But I'd consider consulting under the right terms. There was a beat of silence. Consulting? Yes, Gregory. I'm now operating as an independent advisor. My rate is $1,200 an hour, minimum of 20 hours. Friday morning, I arrived at Atlantic Oak's headquarters 15 minutes early. The lobby exuded quiet confidence, clean lines, refined furniture, and sunlight flooding through tall windows. It was the kind of place where reputations were made and rebuilt. Would you like me to continue the next scene at Atlantic Oak or write the moment when Faircrest scrambles to bring her back? Daniel Carrington welcomed me personally, offering a firm handshake and a warm, assured smile. In his early 60s, he had the seasoned presence of someone who had navigated decades of financial storms without losing his footing. Eleanor, thank you for making the time, he said, motioning toward a glass-walled conference room. Your audit systems at Faircrest have long been a benchmark in the industry. Inside, 3 others were waiting: Atlantic Oak's Chief Compliance Officer, their legal advisor, and the Director of Human Resources. This was not a casual chat. We'll get straight to the point, Daniel began once we were seated. We're aware Faircrest faces a regulatory audit next week. We also know you were the principal architect of their audit compliance platform. I gave a diplomatic smile. I'm not in a position to speak about internal matters at my former firm. Understood, Daniel replied smoothly. What we're focused on is your background. Atlantic Oak holds itself to the highest regulatory standards. We've been preparing to overhaul our systems, and your timing, well, let's just say it's ideal. The proposal was clear: a leadership role overseeing regulatory systems with a significant salary upgrade, executive-level benefits, and the option to begin immediately in a consulting capacity before transitioning to full-time leadership within 60 days. You'll find the offer details here, the HR director said, sliding a professional folder toward me. We understand if you'd like time to evaluate, but we're ready to move as soon as you are. I reviewed the pages carefully. The terms were exceptional, and perhaps more importantly, it was a firm that viewed compliance as a strategic asset, not just a regulatory burden. It also placed me directly in the competitive lane of my former employer. I'm grateful for the opportunity, I said, closing the folder gently. And yes, I'm certainly open to further conversation. Daniel's expression brightened. Excellent. Please take the weekend to review everything. We'd be thrilled to have you with us. As I exited their office building and made my way through the parking deck, I checked my phone. 7 missed calls. 3 were from Gregory. 2 from Martin. The others came from unfamiliar internal numbers at Faircrest. A new email subject line caught my eye: urgent support request. Eleanor, I've seen your consulting offer. While the rate is higher than expected, we acknowledge the urgency of the situation and are prepared to proceed. Please contact me immediately to finalize arrangements. Martin. As I finished reading, the phone rang again. Gregory. Eleanor, please tell me you've considered our proposal, he said, skipping any pleasantries. I have, I answered steadily. I received Martin's message. But I should let you know, I've just had a meeting with Atlantic Oak. They've extended an excellent offer. There was a long pause before Gregory exhaled sharply. Eleanor, I beg you. The system is collapsing. We're getting cascading failures, and no one knows what to do. The audit team arrives in 5 days. I'm well aware of the schedule. Martin has authorized your full consulting fee. We need you today. Right now. I let the silence hang for a moment. The weight of the moment deserved it. I have other obligations this morning, I replied evenly. But I'll let you know when I'm available. Would you like the next scene to show Eleanor's strategic return or her decision to move forward without looking back? I have prior obligations this afternoon, I said calmly. But I can be available first thing Monday at 8 a.m. Monday, Gregory repeated, clearly doing the mental math. That gives us just 2 working days. That's correct. By the time Monday arrived, Faircrest Advisory was in complete disarray. Over the weekend, I'd received more than 30 messages, calls, emails, even a few desperate texts, each more frantic than the last. I'd replied only once, confirming I would arrive Monday at 8 a.m., consulting agreement in hand. Walking back through the building's front doors felt oddly detached. Marcus, the front desk attendant, blinked when he saw me. "Ms. Reed? I thought you retired." "I'm here as an external consultant today," I said, holding up the visitor badge Gregory had arranged. He nodded slowly. "Things have been tense upstairs. Mr. Sloan was here both Saturday and Sunday. Looked rough." The elevator to the 12th floor was quiet. I carried only a slim leather folder and my handbag. No laptop. No badge. No attachments. I wore a crisp charcoal suit, newly purchased for this week's consulting work. It was important they saw the shift. I was no longer part of Faircrest's staff. I was a professional brought in to solve a crisis they had created. The office was unusually full for 8 a.m., voices tense, eyes scanning monitors, whispers exchanged in corners. The urgency was palpable. Marissa caught sight of me from down the hall and rushed over. "Eleanor, thank God you're here. Everything's falling apart." "Good morning," I said, maintaining a tone of quiet formality. "I understand there are complications." She paused at the chill in my voice, but before she could respond, Gregory emerged from the conference room. "Eleanor, thank you for coming." Everyone's inside. The room was full: Gregory, Martin, the remaining compliance team, and 2 IT leads from infrastructure. Martin looked strained. His usual executive polish had faded, his tie loose, hair uncombed, sleeves rolled. "Let's begin," he said immediately. "We're dealing with a serious failure in the audit system." "Wednesday," I corrected. "The audit is scheduled for 9 a.m. on Wednesday. Today is Monday." Gregory stepped in. "Which gives us exactly 2 days." I placed my folder on the conference table and opened it. "Before we start, I'll need this signed. 20 hours of service at $1,200 per hour, totaling $24,000. Payment due in full before work begins." Martin flinched slightly but said nothing. Gregory took the contract and signaled to the finance officer standing by. "We'll handle it now." I turned toward the wall-mounted monitor where the compliance dashboard pulsed with alerts. Every major module was flagged in red. "What you're seeing is the system's built-in protection kicking in," I explained. Each section is designed to verify data accuracy through sequential authorization. When those aren't completed on schedule, the framework restricts access to prevent corrupted reporting. "And only you had the clearance to complete that chain," Martin said slowly. "That's right," I replied. "This system was designed to be precise, not convenient. It's doing exactly what it was meant to." Would you like the next section to show how Eleanor regains control of the audit, or how Faircrest reacts to her value being proven under pressure? "That's accurate," I said, keeping my voice steady. As outlined in prior briefings, the system uses layered authentication to prevent unauthorized changes to audit data. It's one of our strongest arguments during regulatory reviews. It signals integrity. The room fell quiet. It was dawning on them what that actually meant. Without my credentials and the operational insight I held, the entire reporting infrastructure would remain inaccessible. The Securities and Exchange Commission would arrive to find Faircrest unable to produce essential documentation. "What happens if we can't deliver these reports?" one of the younger analysts asked from across the table. Gregory and Martin exchanged a look. "At best, a significant penalty," Gregory answered grimly. "At worst, a suspension of trading operations while we're investigated." I offered a neutral smile. "Let's get to work." By late Tuesday, even with my guidance, it was clear the firm wasn't going to be fully ready. We had restored functionality to most modules and verified roughly 60% of the data, but critical files were still incomplete. "This process typically spans 5 weeks," I said, glancing around the increasingly anxious room. "We're attempting to compress it into 48 hours. Martin paced behind the long table, glancing at his phone every few minutes. What can we do now? You could request a short delay from the SEC, I offered. Frame it as fallout from a leadership transition. That might signal instability, Gregory said. It could trigger more scrutiny, not less. Martin stopped walking. Eleanor, is there any way to finish this by tomorrow morning? I thought carefully before answering. If we work nonstop through the night, we might push it to around 80% completion. But 3 of the modules require full verification cycles. They can't be rushed. They each need at least 12 hours to run properly. Plus, the risk certification needs board approval. So we can't finish, Gregory concluded, rubbing his temples. Not under the current agreement, I clarified. My contract concludes at 5 p.m. today. Martin's face tensed. You're saying you'll just walk out? No matter the outcome. I have another engagement tomorrow morning, I replied. A final round of interviews with Atlantic Oak Partners. That landed like a thunderclap. The realization settled over the group. I wasn't just unavailable tomorrow, I was about to join their chief rival. Martin narrowed his eyes. What would it take for you to stay and finish this? I closed my laptop slowly, collected my paperwork, and responded without theatrics. To complete what remains, I'd need roughly 30 hours at an emergency consulting rate of $1,800 per hour. That comes to $54,000. Paid in advance. Martin didn't blink. Gregory, make it happen. I nodded and reopened my computer. Then let's prepare. We've got a long road ahead. By Wednesday morning, the room was filled with empty coffee cups, scattered notes, and tired faces. We had made remarkable progress overnight. But as the last verification cycles ran, the receptionist's voice came through the speaker. The audit team from the SEC has just arrived. Would you like the next section to show the audit outcome, or Eleanor's transition to her new role? They're early, Gregory murmured, glancing at his watch. It's only 8:30. Keep them occupied, Martin said quickly. Offer refreshments, Wi-Fi access, whatever buys us time. I watched the final verification sequence inch forward on the screen, 87% complete. At the current pace, we needed at least another half hour. Would you like me to greet them? I asked, voice calm and measured. Martin's eyes snapped to mine. Absolutely not. We don't need them finding out we had to rehire you as an external. I gave a neutral nod. In that case, you'll need to explain the delay yourself. The audit packet should include a full disclosure of our current progress. Gregory looked unsettled. We're required to disclose that? Per regulatory guidelines under Rule 204.1 of the Exchange Act. Yes, I explained. Failing to disclose known deficiencies would constitute a reportable violation. Martin's jaw clenched. This is ridiculous. We've paid you over $78,000 to resolve this. You engaged me to support the audit process during a crisis window, I corrected. That scope didn't include undoing structural decisions made before I was brought in. I've completed the work we agreed upon. The progress bar hit 91% as the sound of footsteps echoed near the reception area. The audit team had arrived. What are we supposed to do? Gregory asked, eyes scanning the screen as if willing it to finish faster. I gathered my notes, stood, and adjusted the cuff of my blazer. You tell them the truth. 3 weeks later, I sat in Daniel Carrington's office at Atlantic Oak Partners, reviewing the rollout timeline for our upgraded audit system. My corner suite overlooked the historic district of downtown Charleston. A polished nameplate rested at the front of my desk. Eleanor Reed, Senior Vice President, Regulatory Systems. Daniel entered holding that morning's business journal, the front page folded to an article. He laid it in front of me with a wry smile. Seen this yet? The headline read, Faircrest Advisory sanctioned following compliance breakdown. The article went on to describe a $2 million penalty and heightened oversight. Certain investment services had been temporarily suspended. Regrettable, I said, sliding the newspaper aside. For them, Daniel replied. Though rumor has it Martin Habridge is no longer at the helm. That surprised me only slightly. I suppose the board couldn't overlook his missteps any longer. Apparently, Gloria Faircrest returned from retirement, at least for now, to stabilize operations. I felt a quiet sense of vindication. Gloria had always appreciated the infrastructure I built and the philosophy behind it. Things would likely have unfolded differently if she had remained in charge. Daniel shifted the subject. How are we progressing with the new platform? Right on track, I said confidently. Framework should be complete within 6 weeks, well ahead of our next audit. Excellent. The board was impressed by your proposal. They approved the staffing expansion. As Daniel stepped out for another meeting, I turned back to my screen. I was drafting job descriptions for the new team I'd be hiring, individuals who would build and maintain the next-generation system alongside me. Unlike at Faircrest, here I would be designing more than a system. I'd be shaping a legacy, with the authority to protect it. Would you like the next section to show Eleanor mentoring her new team or being approached for an industry keynote? At Atlantic Oak, I was finally building the kind of team I had long envisioned: cross-trained professionals, comprehensive audit protocols, and shared institutional knowledge. All the safeguards I'd once proposed were now fully supported and funded. My phone buzzed with a message from Robert. Dinner to celebrate your first month at the new job? I smiled, texting back a quick yes. This chapter had started unexpectedly, but I had landed not just securely, but significantly ahead. My salary was 40% higher than what I'd earned at Faircrest, and my responsibilities had expanded to match. Here, compliance wasn't an afterthought, it was strategy. That afternoon, I received an unexpected message in my inbox. The sender, Gloria Faircrest. Eleanor, I hope you're doing well. I've returned temporarily to help stabilize operations at Faircrest Advisory. I want to say personally that the decision to end your role was a mistake. It's had serious consequences. I know you've moved on to what I hear is an excellent position, but I wanted to extend my sincere apologies. I appreciated her note, but didn't feel compelled to respond, at least not yet. Perhaps in time. For now, I had more pressing priorities. This experience had taught me something enduring. When skill and integrity are ignored, consequences follow. Deep expertise isn't something you can trim from a budget without a cost. And sometimes, the most fitting justice doesn't come from confrontation, it comes from absence. From letting others experience the void you leave behind. Looking ahead, I didn't carry resentment. I carried purpose. True vindication wasn't in retaliation, it was in rising, thriving, and demonstrating exactly what value looks like when given the room to grow. And that's exactly what I plan to deliver, one flawless system at a time.